Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, President Donald Trump has just paused US foreign aid for 90 days. Should the UK do the same? While 64% of Brits, nearly two-thirds of the country, think that we should reduce our foreign aid budget, according to new polling by YouGov, prioritising very real public concerns about how our government appears to prioritise international commitments over the domestic needs of our own people. In 2023, the UK's foreign aid budget, get this, reached a whopping £15.3 billion, with £4.3 billion of that sum allocated to domestic refugee programmes, a significant increase of £583 million from the year 2022. However, concerns have emerged that the allocation of funds to certain recipient countries and a potential misuse of aid are being ignored. Consider just some of these numbers, which I find absolutely mind-boggling. Of the £15.3 billion, we are sending $115 million to Afghanistan, a country run by the Taliban, which means funds could be used to inadvertently support rebuilding efforts under Taliban control. Somalia, we've sent £98 million to Somalia, a country which has a history of UK aid falling into the hands of al-Qaeda affiliate al-Shabaab, while Somalians here in Britain are also among the most likely to be given social housing, again paid for by the British taxpayer. Pakistan was sent £69 million and is forecast to get £133 million this year, a country who had some nationals implicated as key figures in the rape gang scandal here in Britain. £58 million went to Bangladesh, a country who undermined UK efforts to strip citizenship from Shamima Begum, a British-born woman who entered Syria to join Islamic State at the age of 15 in 2015, who was eligible for Bangladeshi citizenship. And lastly, Kenya was sent another £48 million, a country where human rights campaigners continue to seek reparations for colonial-era grievances. The Taxpayers Alliance campaign group revealed that in 2024, £536 million is being spent on 10 active funding programmes focused on supporting farmers and farming communities overseas, while here in Britain, the Labour government just smashed family farms that have been operating in this country for generations to save £500 million. In other words, we're sending 15 billion quid overseas while we're taking winter fuel payments off British pensioners on these islands to save £1.5 billion annually. I don't know about you. I think this is absolutely bonkers. I think it represents a betrayal of British people. I think it undermines our national community, our sense of solidarity. But as always, I want to know what you think at home. So hit me up at gbnews.com/yoursay, or on X, you can find me at Goodwin MJ.
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks. And you can too! So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the Sleep Deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
Now, with me tonight to talk about this, senior reporter at Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, and political journalist and broadcaster Zoe Grundeveld. Ellie, 64% of Brits are saying, let's cut foreign aid, let's reduce it. Donald Trump's just paused it in the US. Is this where the mood music is going? Is it time for Britain to actually slash the amount that we're sending overseas and spend it instead on British people here?
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, really. Rachel Reeves is very happy to hand out cash to everyone else while clobbering Britons with record amounts of tax hikes. I mean, we've not only spending a lot of money on foreign aid, although, to be fair, Reeves did cut it in the budget to £13.3 billion, down from £15 billion. But also, we're spending money on giving up the Chagos Islands. That's another £9 billion. That's everyone else is happy. You know, they're happy to hand over cash to everyone else other than our own. Meanwhile, £22 billion is being taxed on the national insurance increase, etc., which of course is in turn leading to job cuts. Actually, companies are cutting jobs at the fastest rate since 2009.
Yeah, I saw that.
And businesses are closing, which in turn relates into business confidence and consumer confidence in the UK economy absolutely nosediving. And now, of course, we see Reeves is left with a tiny, measly £1 billion fiscal headroom, which leaves her with either having to raise taxes again or cut public spending. So why are we spending money abroad when we should be focusing on our own?
15 billion, Zoe, is a big number, and I think the thing that lots of people at home will probably be struggling with, they'll be reading about what's going on in the NHS, people getting treatment in corridors, nurses treating British people in car parks, in hospital gyms, families having to say goodbye to loved ones in crowded public places, but we're sending 15 billion to places like Somalia, Kenya and so on. I mean, lots of Brits are struggling with this.
Yeah, and I can completely understand why. You know, you're absolutely right to point out the state of public services, which are appalling in this country. But I think we need to think of foreign aid in a slightly different way. It isn't, I mean, I think it's easy to think of it as a kind of begging bowl situation, you know, where pots are being kind of banged around and we're chucking some coins in. But I think really a lot of the kind of purpose of foreign aid is also to keep the UK safe. So when we are giving money to other countries, that's because other countries' securities directly impacts us. If we think back to the COVID pandemic, we saw how quickly an issue in one country can spread across the world and cause issues for us here. I think we also have a moral obligation to think about other people. You know, if there are countries that are war-torn, if there are countries experiencing famine, energy crises, whatever it is, not only does that impact us, but we have to think about the impact it has on people there and how we can help them. I think it also, you know, having a more secure world where people are able to, you know, put money into research, are able to share their resources, I think that makes us more secure. I think it makes us safer. Now, you're absolutely right to raise the point that you know, we need to be sure that this money is going into the right hands. So, of course, we know that climate aid, foreign aid, it has been subject to corruption. And we know that, and we should do everything we can to make sure that the systems that are getting aid into the country are transparent, and that we are doing more to make sure that they are falling into the right hands and that the people in those countries are seeing the results, not just corrupt dictators, for example. I think that is important.
Making us safer.
Of course it's important. But you say that, but so from 2000 to 2023, the UK spent £3.5 billion on foreign aid to Afghanistan, right? And the government watchdog, the Independent Commission for Aid, discovered that actually it failed to achieve any stability in the region, obviously, and was involved in human rights abuse and corruption. Yeah. It was funded, you know, £252 million was funding the police. So
that goes to my point, then.
It does, but how would you fix that otherwise? How can you know that it's going into the right hands?
Well, I think we need better structures in place globally to make sure that this money is being taken by the right people and spent in the right way. And I think actually that requires more collaboration, not less. I mean, the issue is if we all stopped providing foreign aid, you have countries that are going to deal with, you know, the climate crisis, for example, is going to be hugely impact a lot of countries. You're going to have far more people affected by that. We're going to see mass migration. You know, no man is an island. We can't just shut our doors and think that none of that happening in the rest of the world is going to affect us. It is. Now, we can talk about the money. I don't know. I'm not an expert in foreign aid. I'm not an expert on what all these countries need. I don't know how much money is appropriate, but I do think foreign aid does keep us safer, and we need to think about, you know, we need to have a conversation about what that.
But how does it make it safer? I mean, it's so expensive as well. I mean, as you said, was it £4.5 billion of which was relocating
domestic refugees.
Yeah, refugees to here.
Yeah.
Right, and as we know that. Puts a huge burden on our public services.
But if we don't help other countries when they are facing things like war, famine, climate crisis, there's only going to be more refugees. And it's in our interest.
There'll also be lots of people watching the show saying, you know, £3.5 billion to Afghanistan. We just smashed British pensioners to save £1.5 billion for winter fuel payments. So why can't we work through the list of problems that we have here in Britain, which are, as you say, quite acute?
Yeah, no, they are.
Winter fuel payments for pensioners, fixing the NHS,
benefit cap,
having more police officers on streets, fixing the borders. I mean, the one thing that I didn't say in the opening there is we spend £5.5 billion a year on our broken asylum system. Why don't we fix these problems first, take a pause on foreign aid, come back to it in 2030, say, OK, we're ready, we fix the problems for the Brits.
I don't think the world can wait that long. We're already seeing the impacts of the climate crisis, for example. I mean, look at what we saw in LA recently. Other countries, Mexico and Canada, they had to help.
That was also mismanagement from the Democrats.
But I mean, the mismanagement didn't cause the fire, did it? The fire was a result of rising temperatures and the winds and all those kind of geographical factors.
But it spread so quickly.
The alternative on that, Ellie, is Trump has said, let's leave the Paris... Well, he's left the Paris Agreement.
Yes.
Now, we've given $11.5 billion to the Paris Agreement. Why don't we exit that, spend $11.5 billion on fixing the NHS?
Exactly. Perfect example. This is why Trump's done so well, right? Because he's all about America first. And this is why he won the popular vote. Because people are now thinking you've actually got to look after your own public services, better living standards, and then you can focus on other people. And if you're not a rich country in the beginning, because you're clobbering your businesses and workers with huge tax hikes to spend on things like foreign aid, etc., and GDP growth is expected to not increase as much as it would do before Reeves's bombshell budget, then how can you actually help the rest of the world?
It's in our country's economic interest to have other trading partners. We need other countries in the world to be able to produce things and to be able to survive.
Can I pick you up on a specific example? Because this is one I struggle with. So we're giving, I think, about 90 million, something like that, to Somalia. But if you look at the data on what's happening when people from Somalia are then coming to the UK, they have extremely high rates of unemployment. They have extremely high rates of social house, renting social houses. They don't seem to be producing or contributing too much to our national economy. And I think, Brits are getting hit twice. We're sending all of this money overseas. They're then... their nationals are coming here, but not really actively contributing to the economy. How can we explain how I don't want to pick, you're not here to represent the Labour Party and the left, but I would say, how do people on the left explain that to British people?
Well, foreign aid isn't going to be a fix-all. We can't say we send this money out and everything's going to be fixed. We can look at particular successes in countries. So I don't know about Somalia as a specific example, but for example, we talked about Afghanistan. Yeah, you're right. There is evidence. There was a report that said that most of our efforts there actually did fail. But what we did do is we did help bring education to hundreds of thousands of women in Afghanistan. We did reduce mortality rates. There is lots of evidence that some of the stuff we did was impactful for particular groups, particularly women and girls. I would say that's a good thing.
That is a good thing, but at what cost?
Yeah, well, no, but this is all about making sure that aid is spent, I think, correctly, targeted correctly, and definitely ensuring that the transparency mechanisms and the accountability mechanisms are strict and in place. And I think we could do much better.
So, potentially not cut it completely, don't spend any money on foreign aid at all, but you could certainly reduce it by billions.
And you could be more efficient with the money you do spend, is what I'm saying. I don't know enough about all these countries to tell you what exact figure I would put on it, but what I do think is more important is that we have the procedures in place so the money is spent correctly.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that with nearly two-thirds of the country saying, let's actually reduce foreign aid, let's actually prioritise Brits before sending money overseas, this isn't going to go anywhere. I mean, it looks like, if anything, the Trump position on pausing foreign aid and saying, let's just reevaluate what is actually working in our national interest is probably going to set the zeitgeist for what happens here in Britain and Europe. But let's see.